there was a sense of certain kinds of constraints. I was a Black girl, and what I could and could not do was coded into everything: what to wear, what you do with your hair, how you talk to boys. People didn't talk in my home about queer at that time, at least not in direct ways. So there were these constraints that came with being who I was.
When I was like 3, my parents moved to Vashon Island, and it's in the middle of Puget Sound, and I grew up in a really old farmhouse that we bought. It was peaceful and gave me a lot of time to explore the woods and learn to appreciate nature a lot. I didn't meet anybody that I knew was LGBTQ until probably in my 20s. If anybody was that I had been around, I had no idea. It was a very homophobic environment that I was raised in, and transphobic wasn't even a word yet.
I went through high school trying to, I guess, pass. So I became a football player, and I dated cheerleaders, and I did everything I could to have them think that he's okay, and then I could do the artwork, and then I could be an artist, and somehow, I didn't have to qualify. So I was always as many people as I needed to be for the people I was around, into college until really I met David.
Living in New York was like having 2 jobs. One was being an artist, and the other was having a gun to your head. It was like that. I had a lot of incidents in New York. It was a tough town, and it was grimy. And so by the time I came to California and I met Jolino, I decided to just stay here and not go back to New York.
I think I'm really still discovering my artist self, or selves, plural. When I went to Austin is when I met a series of people who pushed me in so many ways to be bold, to be courageous, which is not the absence of fear, to be fully myself. I didn't know what they were doing. Is that theater? What is that? And who are they? So I kept going back, and every time I thought, Omi, what are you doing? What do you don't know what you're doing? And that I think is precisely where many of us need to go, so that we can release into something bigger, more brazen and dynamic than the single self can even contain.
I just loved music. I was surrounded by people who were professional quality musicians, and I wanted to do that too. After I got married, my now ex, she wanted to become a square dance caller. So we put her through collar school, but the problem was that most of the square dance callers in the world are old guys. It was really hard to find songs that would fit her. And at that time, technology had gotten to the point where you could do your own home studio recording stuff. And so I started composing on that for her and realized that I actually had a really good forte for doing orchestral composition. Eventually that morphed into us starting our own record label. I became very well known worldwide to all the square dance callers. In fact, a lot of the older ones that you run into today, if I walk into a square dance hall, they'll recognize me. Because like, holy cow, you were amazing. You started a whole different thing happening in square dancing.
A lot of our friends in drama school and art school at CMU were asked to come to New York and start this venue that Bill Graham, who no one knew who he was at the time, was putting together, and they needed posters. And would I do posters? So I did my first poster, And everybody liked it. Jefferson Airplane, Jimi Hendrix, Blue Cheer, Iron Butterfly. Then I did a poster for David Bowie, and then I did Tommy at the Met. And it just never stopped. And that's, the rest is history.
I was brought up with, an assimilationist to the nth degree father. We weren't allowed to speak Spanish. We really had no connection to any of our heritage. It wasn't until I discovered Mosaic where I really felt I was representing the Mexican side of my family. And it really sort of taught me that, even though I don't speak Spanish and, people try to shame me and all that, I don't care anymore. I'm represented by my art, and I always have been. And that's why my mosaic is so important to me, because I feel like it's not just a way to make money. I'm expressing me for the first time.
In 2014, I get a casting call brought to my attention for trans people to sing in a choir on a show called Glee, which I had never watched. I had never sung professionally. In fact, when I was young, I wanted to sing, and I was discouraged. I watched the episodes to try and figure out who the people were. Go to this shoot the next morning. There was 197 transgender people there. Biggest crowd of transgender people ever in history for a television show or film of any kind. A couple months later, I get a phone call from a trans woman who was an artistic director, and she wanted to start a real transgender choir. But I said, sure, I'll help you get it going. We'll find the people. First rehearsal was held in October of that year. And then we performed live just a month later for the first time at Trans Day of Remembrance.
Basically, when I met Joe, he was just coming out of art school, studying to be an illustrator. I was an illustrator, but I was an illustrator who was having trouble getting clients, and he was an illustrator having trouble just being an illustrator.
Well, we were lucky that even though he'd had a 20-some year career before we met, he was starting over. Him starting over, me just starting, kept us on a plateau where I didn't feel like I was always looking up at the top. We were both helping each other, supporting each other.
In a way, I've become the artist that I never thought I'd be.
Black, woman, queer, those are realities that have not been given the respect, support, freedom that they should have. Which means then that those realities are not participating in the fullness of the world in ways that they might. That's the identity of an artist, a truth teller, someone who is more committed to what they know to be true than to being liked, someone who is willing to go psychically, internally to many difficult and joyous places in the service of creation. I'm committed to being all of who I am, all the time.